Hello, my fellow writers. My name is Stephanie, and today we are talking about the slush pile. As dreaded or scary as the slush pile might seem, we're going to dive deep into what that actually means and how we can make sure your manuscript and your query stays far from it. The slush pile is really just a set of queries and manuscripts that an editor or agents or publishers have set to the side and aren't really paying attention to. For the most part, these are unsolicited queries that can either come from the author themselves or from the agent representing the author. And although the querying process itself is incredibly stressful and overwhelming, it doesn't have to be. And you don't necessarily have to assume that your manuscript is going to be thrown into the slush pile automatically. I know in a lot of TV shows and maybe even movies, when they talk about publishing and slush piles, it seems kind of scary.
Hey, morning. Where's the slush pile? It's that sad little stack of books behind me.
And overwhelming, but for the most part, many agents do look at their queries that are sent to them. You just need to make sure that you are following certain criteria depending on what the agent asked for. Now that we've discussed what is a slush pile, we're going to dive deeper into how you can make sure your query stays away from the slush pile. I'm not going to discuss the anatomy of a query just yet, but with these tips, you can kind of get yourself started on how you can best structure your query and how you can go about the querying process to make sure that your manuscript is read by the right person and hopefully picked up by the agency. As you're preparing your query or going through the querying process, here are 4 questions I want you to ask yourself before you click send. A strong introduction is incredibly important in a query because this is your hook. Same way as you would want to hook your readers in the first couple lines, you want to make sure you have a strong hook to reel in the person on the other end who is receiving your query. What I've noticed a lot of authors and writers ask is, how can I create an introduction if I don't know the person I'm reaching out to? There are plenty of agents who only receive queries if it's through a recommendation or if they specifically told you in person during a conference or event that you can submit your manuscript to them. But there are also agents who are actively accepting query letters from anyone. As you are structuring your introduction, make sure you know what that agency and what that specific agent is looking for. If you mention something right off the bat in your introduction that has no relation to that specific agency, or it's the opposite of what is stated on their website, then the agent is going to already start getting disinterested in what you have to say because it shows that you didn't read what was on their website or that you're just ignoring their requirements. Another thing you want to keep in mind when you are writing your introduction is, even if you haven't met that agent before or you aren't coming in through a recommendation, there are other ways to hook in the agent. One of the main ways that I think are really great is if you read that agent's bio and you pick something out of it. Maybe you have something in common with what they have in their bio, or maybe they've previously worked with books that you're interested in or that you've read and loved. Anything along those lines that can help create a connection between you, the author, and them, the agent, will help build a relationship. You also want to look at this not only as a possible publishing opportunity, but also as a business relationship. If you are querying agents, you're going to be working with them for at least a year minimum. And that agent will want to know that not only do you have a profitable book, but you are also incredibly dedicated, you pay attention, and that you are a great person that they would want to work with. Your introduction should be quick and concise and right to the point because it's the first couple things that your agent or whoever is reading your query is going to see, and that's really going to set the stage up for them whether they want to keep reading or just skim through. Aside from the introduction, a common question I always see is, how long should my synopsis be? do they want a synopsis? What should I include in my synopsis? And so on and so forth about the synopsis. After you've read through all of the requirements that that agency or that agent is looking for, you want to format your query in a way that is personalized to them. Typically, you would want to include a synopsis. Personally, I think it's incredibly valuable to have a synopsis in your query, as long as it's more of a blurb rather than 3 paragraphs long of everything that happens from beginning, middle to end in your book. So you should think of your synopsis as more of a blurb where it gives just enough away, where you are bringing in the agent or the person looking at your query and making them feel like they really want to read your book. Because although agents are kind of the middleman between you, the author, and the publisher, you also want to keep in mind that the agents are readers too. They're going to be working with you and your book for months, and they want to make sure that they're reading something that they find enjoyable, that they know other people will find enjoyable. And in order to be able to make them know that it's going to be an amazing book is by having a strong synopsis. And when I think of a synopsis in a query that really stands out to me, I think of something that gives me just enough to want to keep reading. That's going to want to make me request the first 50 or the first 100 or maybe even the full manuscript. And not just that, but the synopsis also shows the person reading your query how well of a writer you are. Something that we'll get more into later on in the videos to come is the stage of where your manuscript should be before you start querying. But something to keep in mind now before we get to that point is when you're querying something, you want to make sure your novel is as polished as possible, because yes, there are going to be edits. Yes, the publishers are going to make their own changes and inputs and provide suggestions, maybe even your agent too, if they help you with the editing process before submitting to a publisher. But not only do you want to make sure that your manuscript is polished, but the synopsis within your query should be polished as well. 3 guidelines that you would want to make sure that are incorporated into your synopsis is that it's captivating, to the point, and doesn't give too much away. Somewhere in the query, you will also want to mention previous works, how your previous books have done. If you've published books within the same genre, maybe you self-published or you worked with another agency before, make sure to mention that. These are all things that will help the agent not only decide whether they want to move forward with the possibility of representing you, but also helps the agent kind of know where you're at in your publishing process and helps them understand you better as an author. Because if you think about it, the query is kind of the first step. It's the first time this agent has probably ever heard about you. So you want to make sure that not only are you including information about your book that you are looking for representation for, but you're also giving them a bit of your own background, but not go too far deep into it and not include anything that's irrelevant. So if you are trying to get a middle grade sci-fi book published, you wouldn't want to mention about a self-help nonfiction book that you published 3 years ago that didn't really make too many sales, just because they're 2 completely different books in 2 completely different genres and with different audiences. So it's not that relevant to the agent. But if you have worked on another middle grade dystopian novel or a middle grade paranormal and you have an audience already built up, you want to make sure that is mentioned to the agent, because that's something that they'll want to know, and that's something that they can ultimately leverage. The last tip that I think is incredibly important, that kind of ties into the one just before, is including social media links. The reason why this is important is because if you are self-publishing specifically, and more than likely if you are doing nonfiction, a lot of agents want to see that you already have a strong platform and you have an audience and you have people that are interested in reading what you come out with, and you're engaging with your audience. So this doesn't necessarily mean that if you don't have an author platform that no agent's ever going to want to represent you, but it does help the agent kind of understand more of where you are at. So if you do have social media links like a Twitter, a Facebook with a strong following, then do make sure to include that at the end. And also the social media links do help put a face to the query, which helps them when they are looking further into you as an author. So with those 4 tips and now knowing what the slush pile really is, I hope that your next batch of queries are amazing. And I know they will. If you have any questions or any more recommendations that you'd want to add on to these tips, leave some comments down below. Let's start a conversation and see what we can recommend in our next querying video. If you're in the process of writing your novel or just finished writing your novel, congratulations. And I have a checklist just for you. This is a checklist that will help you make sure you're staying on track from editing to marketing to publishing. Make sure to click the link down below so you can get this free PDF sent to your inbox. And if you have trouble staying organized, I've got you covered too. I have another PDF that you can print out, that you can write down all of your writing, editing, and publishing goals, and make sure that you start 2019 on the right foot. If you want this PDF as well, the link is down below. And also, please don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you liked this video, click on the like button so I know that we should be making more videos like this one. And if you want to see more, make sure to click on the subscribe button down below, and don't forget to hit that notification bell button so you never miss another writing and marketing tip from Book2Publish. Thank you guys so much for passing by. Hope you have a wonderful day.